Hello everyone and welcome back to another book review. Today I am going to be reviewing Isaac Asimov's The End of Eternity. This is a sci-fi novel about free will, choice, time travel paradoxes, and love, so stay tuned. First of all though, if you are new here, I post new book reviews on my channel almost every single day, and this encompasses both fiction and nonfiction, so if you want to wake up in the morning and get your daily dose of reading recommendations and book reviews, feel free to stick around. First of all, a little introduction on Asimov and my relationship to him and time travel novels before I dive into my review. I believe this is the first novel I have read by Asimov, which is quite impressive because according to the Wikipedia page on the author, he wrote or edited over 500 books. So it's kind of impressive that in all my reading, I haven't actually read anything by him. I think some of that came down to intimidation. I didn't know where to start. But I'm doing a challenge where I read through all the winners and shortlisted finalists for the Hugo Awards based on the Wikipedia page. That's just what I'm using as the base. And The End of Eternity was a finalist in 1956 for Best Novel. So I needed to read it. This was going to get over that indecision on where to start with such a prolific writer. And I got it out of my library and I gave it a read. Time travel and me, I know some people have problems with time travel and some people really want to get into the nitty-gritty on how the time travel is occurring in the sci-fi book, or they're very concerned on how paradoxes are going to be worked out. And time travel paradoxes such as meeting yourself are mentioned in this book, so he doesn't entirely avoid it. But when reading a sci-fi novel, can engage a suspension of disbelief where I don't need to know every single detail, as long as it's theoretical enough and the author isn't playing too fast and loose with rules of time travel. I can generally believe that the time travel is occurring and I don't need the nitty-gritty details to understand how the time travel is occurring. That being said, I think if you want to know every little detail and you want every little paradox worked out, maybe this isn't the book for you. I know some people really don't like time travel in books, so in that case, this probably also isn't the book for you, but I'm okay with that in time travel novels, so all of that worked out for me. Now let's get into the plot. The End of Eternity follows Andrew Harlan. Andrew Harlan is a working member of the Eternals. In Eternity, he is specifically a technician. So the way things are set up is at some point in human history in the past, according to the time frame set in this book, it was discovered that you could have this overarching, in my head, I kind of pictured it as like heaven. There's like something outside reality. This was called eternity, and people can be brought up into eternity, but they're workers. So what their job is to look over all these centuries in the human timeline, I guess you could say. And there's people who work as life plotters, so they follow people's life plans, and there's people who observe planets, and not planets, but like time frames, and then there's technicians. Technicians are responsible for making changes to the world to affect a change in reality, a reality change. And this could be done overall for the good of humanity. So for example, maybe addiction rates are becoming too high in one society. There's a technician who comes in who says, oh, if we just cut the brakes on this person's car at this time, it'll prevent him from reaching this meeting, so it'll prevent this bill from being passed, so it'll prevent, and the changes kind of ripple out. So eternity is kind of like these gods, or they're not actually eternal being, even though they're called Eternals. They do not live forever. They do not necessarily have special powers, but they do interfere with reality from above, making changes to affect the course of human history, ostensibly for the good of human history. Andrew Harlan is a technician, and the technicians are the ones who do the hands-on work. So everyone else can kind of be one step removed from the process, but Andrew Harlan is the one who actually goes and makes that change and decides, like, okay, if we move this box from this shelf to this shelf, that's enough of a change in reality to prevent a war from occurring or prevent a famine from happening. And I think you get the sense that some people don't like the closeness or the intimacy he has with the changes in reality, because some of these changes do result in deaths from one reality to another. So some people, or a lot of people, have this level of superstition or dislike for technicians, so he kind of works by himself. However, the plot continues and Harlan is sent on an assignment to observe, and he meets on observational assignment a woman named, now it's Noyes, N-O-Y with a, I want to say umlaut, but I don't think that's what they're called when they're over a Y, the two dots above the Y, and then an S, Lambent. I'm just going to refer to her as her last name, Lambent. She is the female protagonist, the main female character. Harlan is experiencing a lot of confusing emotions, which to me, I was like, oh, he likes her. But Harlan obviously doesn't really understand that. So things do intensify on Earth, and they wind up falling in love, or in particular, Harlan winds up falling for Lambent. And he decides that he's going to do something that he has not been permitted to do, take her out of reality, take her up to eternity, hide her somewhere, and try to prevent her death, because he is required to do a reality change, which results in her death from one reality shift to another. Harlan has, of course, affected many reality changes in his time, which have resulted in the death of people, but this time it personally affects him, and he decides to start breaking rules. It's that love conquers all, right? It's that love above everything. He's willing to break rules and do things against his profession for the woman that he loves. However, this action, this taking of Lambent out of reality and into eternity and trying to kind of cover things up, creates a domino effect of changes that occur, and he starts to realize that everything around him isn't as it seems. His idea of what is real, what is true, the good of eternity is called into question, and he starts to have a lot of doubts as the story progresses, and this domino chain has to move through completion. We also have a lot of questions on who Lambent is, how much she knows or doesn't know about what's going on, and ultimately choices that Harlan's going to have to make regarding changes in reality and eternity itself, hence the phrase, the end of eternity. It's not very often that I get to read 2 5-star books in a week. I love reading. I think there's a lot of great 3 and 4-star books out there that I read that are educational, that are enjoyable, but a true 5-star, multiple 5-star books in a week is rare for me, unless I'm reading manga series, in which case maybe like an arc's going really well and I'm giving lots of 5 stars out. Manga's kind of its own separate category, so I feel like really don't compare that to anything else. In reading novels, it's very rare for me to give out multiple 5 stars in a week. But last week I read this one, and I read Lee Brackett's The Long Tomorrow. Both of those were 5-star sci-fi masterpieces, and it's kind of rare for me to read 2 so close together, and both Lee Brackett's The Long Tomorrow and The End of Eternity were finalists in the 1956 year for the Hugo Award for Best Novel. Both of them, I think, were definitely better than the winner of that year, which was Double Star by Heinlein, I think. So I'm not really sure how the voting played out, but I have just been loving these books, these sci-fi books that I've been reading recently, and I hope that trend continues. The twists in this book just kept coming, and I felt like I was on my feet the entire time. But I also felt like I could feel like Harlan felt. I could feel the reality literally unwinding around Harlan the way that he felt as his reality unwound, as he discovered lies, as he discovered misdirections or things he wasn't told, or things that no one knows as he discovers or hears about them. You feel that Harlan's world's unwinding, but you also feel like your sense of reality and what you know in this book also unwinds with it. You become less sure of the things that you're told, or maybe things you were suspicious of in the beginning, or maybe things you overlooked at the beginning of the novel come back into play closer to the end. I do think that Andrew Harlan, the main character, is a little gullible, malleable. He's easily fooled. He keeps making decisions, and I feel like he does become less confident in the decisions he makes throughout the book because he keeps being fooled by things keep not being correct. But I feel like he is a little bit gullible, and I kept thinking, like, why are you so confident about these decisions when the last 4 decisions you made also wound up being like the wrong decisions? But of course, love blinds people's minds and causes them to act in strange ways, so I'll give him a pass. I do think he was kind of a gullible, foolable character, I guess you could say, but I don't think that makes him a bad character. That's just a personality trait I noticed in him. But yes, we do see him move from more confident to slightly less confident, especially in like the last chapter or 2. He becomes a little less confident about his decisions, even though he still is acting rashly and maybe in not very logical ways if he really stopped and thought about the last couple weeks of his life and everything that came to light in the last couple weeks in the book. I was really worried that Lambent, the main female protagonist, the love interest, would be uninteresting. I feel like these books from the 1950s, sometimes the female characters are not very well written. In my personal opinion, I do think that's just a product of the time, so it's something that I'm just accepting, and I'm trying to not dole out too harshly, but Lambent actually wound up being a very interesting character, and I really did like it. I think Harlan has some interesting takes on Lambent, especially at first, but it's not written in a way, I don't know, I appreciated it, and I think nothing, how do I say this? Things were better than I thought they were going to be, and the main female character wound up being very interesting and a compelling character compelling character in and of herself, which I felt was kind of unusual for the time and very interesting. Now, someone did tell me that Asimov didn't write good women. I do not know if that person has read a lot of Asimov. I do not know if that person was correct, or that person was just projecting, or that person had heard something from somewhere else. That was actually not my experience with The End of Eternity, so I was very surprised. However, I'm not saying that person who told me that was wrong. Of course, maybe his other books do not have very well written women. So that's just a comment that I heard, and maybe you've heard that and you have something to say about that, and you can put it in the comment section below as well. There was action right up to the end of this novel, which I feel like is sometimes a hard balance for authors to strike. If you have action all the way up to the end, sometimes the ending feels very rushed, it feels contrived, it feels like the author has to fit everything in a box or leave plot threads unanswered. In The End of Eternity, we had action all the way up until like the very few pages to the end of the book, but I feel like things did end very in a satisfactory manner, because the author had set everything up so you know the consequences of choices that were being made close to the end of the book. So I feel like the author had done the legwork at the beginning of the beginning and middle and close to the end of the book, so that there could be action to the very end, but still end in a satisfactory manner. So I did appreciate that. Overall, this was an excellent work of sci-fi. I loved it. I was very impressed with the writing style. I was very impressed with the author's ability to weave a compelling story. I liked the characters. I was especially very impressed for a 1950s novel to have such a compelling and interesting female lead. I thought that was very well done. I felt like the twists were appropriate. I just really liked it. This was a really good book. Again, it's like Lee Brackett's The Long Tomorrow. I feel like I can't say enough good things about it, and it's so rare in my reading experience to read two very good books that aren't related or part of a series so close together. And I'm so glad that I had the experience of reading The End of Eternity by Asimov, and I hope that if you have not read this book, you check it out. If you want to read time traveling books that involve a little bit of romance, some time paradoxes, and questions about free will and choice and the trajectory of human history, then maybe The End of Eternity would be a great choice for you to check out and read. If you have any thoughts on this book or Asimov, or if you want to debate what I've heard about Asimov's writing of women, or if anything I said in this video sounds interesting, please leave a comment below. I love to receive comments. I also love to receive reading recommendations, so leave your recommendations in the comments below. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.